Postmen seldom think of the State Barge Canal as a fisherman's paradise, but it seems like one to Billy Cummings. Many's the morning he's off before dawn, promising Mom some fine bass for dinner. But there's no luck this morning. Well, you get those days sometimes, especially if you're in a hurry. Pop said be back by 9, and when Pop says 9, he doesn't mean 9:15. Nearby, work was progressing on the Thruway, the great superhighway that'll run from one end of the state to the other. Well, it didn't take Billy very long to discover who owned the pencil. Finding the pencil had its lucky side for Billy, too, for it got him a ride home. It was a pretty bumpy ride up to Billy's house, and by the time he got there, his father was waiting for him a little impatiently.
Hi, Pop.
Well, what kept you so long, Billy?
I'm sorry, Pop.
Well, hurry up now and put that pole away. Oh, yeah, and by the way, you might as well give Mom all them fish you promised we'd have for dinner.
It's a mighty fine boy you got there, Mr. Cummings.
Yeah, he'd be all right if he ever got places on time.
Well, this time it was my fault. You see, I lost my old working partner here last night. Billy went out of his way to bring it back to me.
Uh-huh.
Oh, by the way, Mr. Cummings, my name's Walt Corwin. I'm with the State Department of Public Works. My job's highways.
Pleased to meet you, Mr. Corwin. Oh, yes, you must be working on that new road over there.
Over there and just about everywhere in the state. You know, the Thruway's the biggest highway job the state's ever undertaken. Run all the way from New York City up to Buffalo and the Pennsylvania line.
So I hear. Mighty big road like that's going to cost the state some money.
Yeah.
I sure wish they'd spend some of it on the roads around here. How'd you like that when you rode over just now?
Well, I guess I gotta admit your road could stand some fixing. But that's where the Thruway's gonna help you a lot.
I don't get it. State's got just so much money to spend on roads. If they spend it on the Thruway, they can't very well spend it on my road.
Well, maybe I can explain that.
I'm sorry, but I've got no time for lessons in magic right now, Mr. Corwin. We're late already. See you again sometime.
Okay, Mr. Cummings. But there's nothing magic about it. You'll see.
Go on, I'll be watching for you.
Okay.
In the weeks that followed, Billy spent lots of his free time watching the Thruway construction. First came the shovels, biting deep into the hillsides. As he watched, even Billy began to marvel at the size of the job, especially this stage of it. Leveling out the hills, filling in the valleys, so there'd be no steep grades all the way from New York City to Buffalo and the Pennsylvania border. Sometimes he wondered if anyone knew how it would all turn out. But before very long, the road was beginning to take shape. They were getting the Thruway down to grade, rolling and packing it flat and firm to give the world's finest highway the world's finest foundation. And amazingly soon, concrete was being laid. 4 lanes in some places, 6 in others. It's a tremendous job building superhighways as we're building them today to last maybe a quarter of a century without substantial repairs. That means, for one thing, plenty of steel reinforcing. Yes, building the Thruway is a gigantic undertaking, but when it's all been done, it'll be so smooth that you'll hardly know you're riding over a road at all. Walt, who'd been away for a while, was wondering what had happened to Billy when he spotted him. He'd been hoping to see him because he was going to have to be away again in a few days visiting a finished section of the Thruway. Billy began acting a little shyly, and Walt wondered what was on his mind. Well, what do you know? Fried chicken. Billy had heard from the contractor that Walt was coming back today, and he'd asked his mother to fix up something special for lunch for both of them. They lost no time getting over to the canal for their feast. As they ate, Walt told Billy about the old Erie Canal, predecessor to the Barge Canal. It had a bearing on the Thruway, too. He asked if Billy could recall from his geography a map of the area west of New York State. This vast area had wonderful natural resources: timber, minerals, fish and animals, and wonderfully fertile agricultural land. But before the Erie Canal was completed in 1825, there was one thing missing: an easy way to ship the products of the West to the East. Then came the Erie Canal. Trade and commerce for a great part of the nation flowed through New York State and within the state. Former villages and hamlets became names known all over our country. And before very long, they grew into towns and cities famous for their manufacturing, trade, and commerce. Well, the very reasons that made the Erie Canal important, Walt told Billy, were the reasons the Thruway was needed. This marvelous superhighway, 535 miles long, would link all the people of the state. New York City to Albany, to Schenectady, and Utica, Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. Up to Niagara Falls and down to the Pennsylvania border and all the cities in between. And the cities off the Thruway would be linked together too by great state highways which would bring the Thruway within easy reach of the entire state, from Plattsburgh and Watertown to Jamestown, Elmira, and Binghamton. And just as the Erie Canal had, the Thruway would link us to the whole nation through the fine highways of New England and Canada, of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and the Middle West. Marvelous roads like these. Don't forget the Thruway idea isn't new. Our neighbors' superhighways are already built, now under construction or planned. That's important too, for if we didn't build the Thruway, a man from the Middle West using the turnpikes of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey could get to New England quickly and comfortably, almost without touching our state at all. But with the Thruway, the best and easiest route from the west to New England will cut right across New York State. The Thruway will be the heart of our transportation system. Over it, trucks will haul all the things we want and need. But they won't be the principal users. It'll be people traveling by car for business and personal reasons. And vacationers going to and from New York's marvelous recreation areas. And all of them will mean business for our state's service stations, hotels and lodging houses, restaurants and road stands, amusement industry, and stores. Remember, vacationists alone spend as much as $2 billion a year in New York State. Of each vacation dollar, 27 cents is spent for meals, 25 cents in stores, 22 cents for lodging, 17 cents for transportation, and 9 cents on amusements. Walt told Billy his father would understand what this difference meant. And speaking of his father, up he walked, come to fetch Billy. Mr. Cummings asked Walt how the magic road was coming. Then he got quite serious. Said he'd heard traffic would move mighty fast on the Thruway, and he wondered if that wouldn't bring some safety problems to folks out in the country. Walt told him that on the contrary, the thruway would make things much safer. Bridges will keep everything, cows, horses, people, and cars, from crossing or entering the thruway except at specially constructed interchanges. Mr. Cummings said everything about the thruway sounded good, assuming it came true. So Walt suggested that he could have a first-hand report on whether everything was true if he let Billy visit a finished section of the thruway. Mr. Cummings finally agreed and said maybe Walt could tell Billy that magic about the thruway getting the old road past the Cummings house fixed. So a couple of days later, Billy and Walt set out. They didn't have to go far before the reasons we need the thruway became clear enough. But it wasn't just that some of the roads weren't in very good condition or that they had dangerous intersections. Too many of them were just out of date. Of course, there were lots of reasons for that. First, the Depression. Then, when that was over and the state finally had enough money, along came the war, so we couldn't get labor or materials. Well, after 15 years of semi-neglect, many of our highways weren't much to boast about. Of course, we could fix a lot of things, and we were fixing them every day. But it wasn't the physical condition of the highways that caused the main trouble. The trouble was that the roads just weren't wide enough for the volume of traffic. And even if we widened them, which would mean buying expensive property in built-up areas, there'd still be crossroads and traffic lights. But there won't be a single red light or crossroad from one end of the thruway to the other. Once, when they got gas, the attendant asked about thruway licenses. Walt told him there'd be a special license so that only users paid for the thruway's construction, and it wouldn't cost taxpayers a red cent. The licenses would be sold at convenience stations. Before long, they reached the thruway on one of the safe interchanges Walt had told Mr. Cummings about. They used a special extra lane to gain speed before entering the regular lanes of fast traffic. That's another safety factor. So is the wide center mall. What a place for driving. 70 miles an hour if you want. But Walt just eased along and relaxed. How wonderful it was to be on a highway without steep hills, without dangerous crossroads, a road that was big enough to handle not only today's volume of traffic, but the traffic the future would bring. How wonderful it was to be on a road wide enough for you to pass a truck without worrying about your fenders or your safety. Just think what the thruway will mean in lives saved every year. And there's another big safety factor. The thruway is a vital link in our national defense. It's a civilian highway for the emergency evacuation of our great cities. And it's a military thoroughfare for speeding the armed forces to any part of the state. But most important of all, imagine what the thruway is going to mean to Billy's generation when they grow up, no matter what their occupation. Dairyman in Herkimer County? Long Island poultryman? Merchant in the Niagara frontier? Manufacturer in the Capital District? Lumberman in the north? Just look at the time the thruway will save them. Why, by the time the truck on the thruway reaches its destination, the truck on our present highways isn't even in the picture. Using the thruway's finished sections around the clock, already products are getting to market in less time, and time is money. From Herkimer County to New York, for example, will take 4 hours less along the thruway than it does today. That's up to $28 saved on every truckload of milk. Poultry from Long Island to Syracuse, up to $95 saved every trip. And the savings in transportation costs will eventually show up as savings in the consumer's pockets on milk and poultry and just about everything we need. What a break that'll be for the people who live in the city. What a break it'll be, too, getting trucks onto the thruway and out of the cities. Unless, of course, you like this. day and night. And if you've ever been in a jam like this, you know another thing the thruway will mean. In the New York area, for example, the commuter will get to work without lights, without stops, crossing the Hudson on the mighty new Thruway Bridge and then down through Westchester. It won't matter which borough you want, across the Bronx Whitestone or Triborough bridges to Queens, down Manhattan's river highways, through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. Just think what fast transportation like this is going to mean to every city along the Thruway. No wonder employers are building new plants along it. No wonder, too, that employees are buying new houses around it. All the people of our state, whether they live near the Thruway or not, will share in its benefits. For because of the way the Thruway is being financed, the state's regular highway funds can be spent for major highway improvements throughout the state. We're making them every day. What's more, we're building wide arterial routes to connect the Thruway to the very heart of the cities. Every engineering trick is being used to widen city streets without interfering with existing property, paving shoulders for parking to free the streets for traffic, building bus stops outside the regular traffic lanes, constructing special turnouts for cars waiting to turn. That was the magic Walt wanted to tell Mr. Cummings about.
Hi, Pop.
Well, hello, son. Did you have a good time?
Gee, Pop, what you missed.
I know. But did Walt tell you how the Thruway is going to get our road fixed and without any new taxes? Did he explain that magic to you?
Say, I've got you now, Mr. Cummings. You can't say that you're going off for business, so you're going to have to listen. Look, since we're talking about magic, I'll use this as a wand.
Walt explained that this line represented smaller state roads like the Cummings, and this, the main state highways. Now, present highways aren't wide enough to handle today's traffic, so a new road, the Thruway, is needed. Of course, that'll take a lot of money, something like $450 million. The job could be financed two different ways. One would be to spend most state highway funds, represented by these matches, on the Thruway, leaving little for maintaining main roads and even less for secondary roads like the Cummings. That's how Mr. Cummings had figured it. But suppose that the Thruway is financed by the sale of bonds, not state bonds, but special bonds of the Thruway Authority backed by state credit. Then none of our state highway funds are needed on the Thruway. Instead, they can be used to improve main highways and secondary ones like the Cummings. Well, that's the magic. That's how the Thruway is going to be built. That's why it won't cost the general taxpayer a cent, and why hand in hand with its construction will go improvements to existing highways. Walt said he'd bet the magic fixed the Cummings Road by the time he got back. He'd be away for some time on a survey trip along the Thruway's route. What a route it was, opening all of New York's fabulous vacation land to residents and out-of-staters alike. For just as the Thruway would link our great commercial centers, so would it open a new era for our vast recreational areas. Yes, the Thruway would work magic of all kinds. And it had already started. The Cummings Road looked like new by the time Walt next got a chance to drop by for a visit. He could hardly wait to see Mr. Cummings' reaction and Billy's, what with their road fixed and that section of the Thruway finished past their house. Of course, Billy had been sold all along, and now his father was just as enthusiastic as he was. Couldn't get over his new road. That and the Thruway itself. The Thruway, the highway to a bright and prosperous tomorrow for all the citizens of New York State.